Alright, going to talk about how to take two different sets of data on tables inside Excel, put them onto one table and make it to where you can have a drop down that would change, flip back and forth between the different data set tables. So two things we're going to use for this. The first is Power Query. So if you have a Apple computer, this won't work. You won't have access to Power Query as of 2021. Second thing we're going to be using is VBA. And so if you don't have those turned on, I recommend you go out and look up some videos on how to turn those on. Once we get those turned on, though, I've typed up some instructions here, and I'll put them on the screen here. And hopefully this will fill in any gaps that I miss in the video. You can see here we got names. You'll have to change these names based on what makes sense for you and what you're building. But you know, generally, other than that, you're going to be following these steps to a T. All right, so I'm going to move this over here. So I've already gone out and got some data here and put them onto a Excel file. I've got three sets, and so what I've done with the data is I've looked for data that has the same column numbers, and this is going to make it easier for showing purposes. You can do it with data sets that are not even or don't have the same columns, like this right here. Even though I changed these were technically different originally. So, you know, let's say I'm just going to change this to that. I can come here and it'll change that column header, then it'll change it back. So it's no problem. The only issue you're going to run into is if you were to go to graph this data, it would have issues graphing it because the column numbers is changing. So that's what I've done here. I've kept the columns the same, and so I'm going to start off with step one here. We're going to turn this into a table. So I'm going to Shift Control over, Shift Control down, insert table. My table has headers. Then I'm going to insert three rows here. And this is just going to make it easier. I'm going to say table name here. Then I'm going to list my table name so that it's easier for me to see when I come to the data. Do the same thing here. Alright, I've got those taken care of, and so now I'm going to go up here and name these tables. And so the name we want to choose, up here we're going to go Formulas, Name Manager. You see it's Table 1, Table 2, and Table 4. So we want to name them something that is standardized, and something that we would be able to know just from looking at the name what we're referring to. So in the documentation earlier in the video, I mentioned that this thing won't accept just numbers, and when you throw in numbers and symbols, it could reject it. So we want to try to avoid those. So we're going to name this, let's see what will work here. Looks like doesn't allow just a number and symbols. So we're going to do table 2019 batting. Accepted that. That's on 2021 though. So 2021. This is on 2020, so we're going to name this the same thing, table 2020 batting. Alright, so once we get that, we're going to close. Then I'm going to enter this right up here. So we named it table 2019 batting. Alright, so now that we've gotten those taken care of, we're going to create our new sheet, and this is where our main table is going to go. So call this main, and we're going to have a drop down here, so we're going to have a season right here. We're going to go insert, we're going to go data validation. We're going to go to list, and then we're going to list out the years that we want. So we're going to do 2019, 2020, and 2021. Alright, so I'm going to highlight that interesting thing I just found here. When I came up here, the theme colors were different than what I normally am used to. So apparently these things can change, and how you change it back is you come up here, page layout, colors, and you choose office, and that's the normal standard one. You can also choose a bunch of different ones up there if you want, so I didn't know that. So now that we've gotten this box laid out though, we're going to move on to the third, or step 4. So we can see that here the table names is TBL 2021 batting, and it follows that. But the drop down here is just the number. So we're going to have to do step 4 here. I'm going to have to construct a cell that takes the 2019 and puts it to where whatever is in this box, and then we're going to have added to the sides of it the string text of TBL and batting. So we don't really want to do this on the main page here, so you can find just any old place in excuse me, the data we have here. We're not going to change this data, so I'm going to do it right over here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do equals quotation TBL, and then so the next part of this we want to have the number, and we want to have that number change based on whatever our drop down is. So to do that, we're going to do another quotation, then the and sign. We're going to come over here to wherever our drop down is and select that, and it looks like it doesn't want to do that, so I'm going to come up here. You can see main and then a exclamation mark indicates that we want to go to the main sheet, and then we're going to type the cell in right after that, so D3. And then we're going to reverse what we just did as far as the and the quotation mark. And so that references that cell, and then we're just going to type out what's remaining after that. So batting, and we're going to close it off with another quotation, and we're going to hit equals. Alright, so you can see there's nothing there, and that's because we don't have anything selected. So, alright, thank you. Let's see what this is doing. Something went wrong, okay. So we're going to come over here, 2021, we'll come back over here, you can see that created that. And then if we change this to 2020, it would change from 2021 to 2020. So that's what we want for step 4. So now in order to use this in the Power Query, under step 5, we're going to change this to, we're going to put this into a table. So we're going to highlight the cell right above it in the cell that has the name in it. And we're going to come Insert Table. And we're going to check my table has headers. Okay. And then it's going to automatically take us to this one. And this little tab up here, Table Design. We're going to uncheck Header Row. And what that's going to leave us with is this one cell inside the table here. So we're going to come up here and into the name variable, which is Formulas Name Manager, and we're going to change table 5 here to something that makes sense. This does not have to be, in fact shouldn't be, as the same structure as the other ones. So we're just going to name it variable. We're going to close that out. Next step is we're going to take this newly created table and move it into the Power Query. So we're going to select on the cell that has the table on it. We're going to come golly, I have a brain. Alright, select the cell, come Data, and then we're going to hit From Table Range. That's going to bring it into the Power Query here. And so we're going to next click on Advanced Editor under the Home tab. And so it's going to automatically populate these 3 lines of code here. And the source is what we need. Promoted headers, what this does is it promotes everything, it moves everything in the Power Editor query one line up on the table, because I guess it assumes that typically the first row of data is going to be a header. This is not the case with us, but I don't think it matters for this purpose. We can just leave it. And the change type is the type of data. So you can see here, golly, this is, you can click here and change whatever type of data you want. It automatically defaults to like an any type, where it's ABC123. It doesn't know what it is in this situation. So what this is saying is basically duplicating it. You know, it's saying any. That doesn't help us at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that, and from here I can just click on that. That'll change that. All right, let's open up in the Advanced Editor. So I'm gonna hit a comma there, and then I'm gonna come down one line. What I'm gonna enter is first bit of line is going to be a variable name, and so this can be anything, it doesn't matter, but we're going to choose something that makes sense. So we're going to choose, this is going to be a batting year. Record.field, and we're telling it we want it to go to the source table, just the table that we created, and we're going to do a little curly squiggly parentheses, and we're going to put 0. And so what this is telling us is we want the first row, this is the row, and we want the first row in the table. So it's going to start from 0, so the first row is going to be 0, the second row is going to be 1, third row is going to be 2, and so on. So we're going to put 0, we're going to close off the squigglies, put comma, and then the next part is going to tell it what column we want to use. So I actually am going to delete this promoted headers. I don't think we need this. It's going to screw it up. And so the column name is going to be column 1 if we haven't named it. And I'm going to close that off. And then down here, we're going to leave this open, no comma at the end of it. But down here, we're going to delete this and change it to batting year. Hit done. So you can see that returns that name as a query result. So at that point, we're going to come down and we're going to click on inside the query We're going to right click and we're going to do new query, other sources, blank query. And we'll come up here to advanced editor. And then, so this is going to bring up a blank document here. And then we're going to be looking for, we're going to put one line of code in here. And I went ahead and copy and pasted it from the document. If you are copy and pasting from a Word document, it's important to remember that the quotation marks don't come in correctly. You can see they're sort of slanted off to the left, and it's not going to be able to read that inside here. So we're going to delete all of them and just re-enter them. And what this says is, so we're creating the table for our main data sheet that's going to be changing based on the drop-down. And what we're saying is we want it to reference the table inside the workbook that is named, and the name is going to be whatever our variable is inside of Power Query. So because our Power Query is linked to that cell that's going to be changing as we change the drop-down, whenever through this linkage, whenever we change that drop-down, it's going to change what table is loaded inside this Power Query. So I'm going to do this one little line of code here, and we don't need a comma after it because we have in source there. So I'm going to click done. All right, I copied it from the document, but this is padding here. All right, so I'm thinking this is variable. I'm going to change this to batting year over here. All right, so yeah, you're going to make sure that this is named whatever that variable is. It was giving me an error because it was in this one, so I had to delete this, change this name, and then it loaded the data. So it's loaded it in here. So now at this point, we're going to want to choose where we put this on the sheet. So we're going to come up here and hit close and load. We're going to do the drop down, close and load to, and we want the table to load on the existing. All right, looks like it's not allowing me to do existing worksheets, so I'm not sure why, but we're going to work around it here. So I'm just going to do table, new worksheet, hit OK. It's going to load this onto a new one, and I'm going to delete this. See if I can't come back in here and table, existing worksheet. All right, so I'm going to put it right here. It looks good. It's in there, it loaded. And so now what I'm going to do is you can see these things sort of changed. The columns did. So I'm going to go ahead and resize these columns to something that I want. So I'm going to come up here, format, column width, and do 10. And let's see, 8.43. 6 looks fine. And so then at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to, because this is going to be refreshing constantly, we want to make sure that it doesn't automatically change those column widths. So we're going to come here, highlight all this, come up here to, let's see, table design, properties, and we're going to uncheck adjust column width so that it doesn't do that. And then you can resize it here. So now at this point we have a working document. You can see if I changed this to 2021 and refreshed over here, it would change the data. Change it to 2019. You can see that changes. But we want to make it to where it's doing this automatically with the click of a button, that we don't have to come over here and constantly click reload. So how we're going to do that is through VBA. We'll come up here on developer. open up the Visual Basics tab. We're going to insert a module onto, go ahead and close this. Insert a module on here. So we're going to come up here to Insert Module. All right, and now what we're going to do is we're going to enter the code on the documentation here. So, and what this is going to do is this is going to automatically refresh the query every time we run this macro. So we want to make sure that the query name is correct. So I believe I may have skipped over this part. Let me see. We named it query 1. We want it to be something it's a little more descriptive. So I name this variable table. And inside VBA, we're going to name this variable table. So this is the macro that we're going to call to refresh the query. What we want to do next is we want to put a piece of code in that says when we want to run this code and when we don't want to run this code. So we want to run this code when we click on the drop-down and update the drop-down. But other than that, we don't want to run it on the sheet. So we're going to come here inside VBA to main. We're going to double click on that. And we'll come up here. There's 2 drop-downs. So we're going to choose worksheet. And then we're going to choose change on that second one. It's going to create these. So we want just the change, not the selection change. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say if target.address, and what this means is what a target address is whatever cell is currently clicked on. So if I was to click on this, the target address is A3. If I'm typing in it, the target address is A3. Come up here. If target.address equals the cell that is the drop-down. So we're gonna see it's gonna run this code. Probably say D3. All right. I say D3. An important thing to remember here is that you have to put the $ next to it, otherwise it's not going to run. And then close that off with a quotation, and then we're going to say, so it's saying if the cell we're selecting is D3, and hit space, underline here, tab this out, then we want it to run that macro. And so the name of the macro was refresh, so we're going to call the macro, which is refresh. If it's not D3, then we don't want it to do anything, so we can just leave it blank. And then we can in the if statement, and then we have the in sub down there. So that is it for the instructions. So now we should be good to go. Let's come over here and give it a test here. All right, you can see these are updating very quickly. So we can close out of the VBA. It looks good. And so now, at this point, all you have left to do is, if you wanted to graph these, we could graph these on a graph. So if you wanted to see, all right, I could sort this. Let's do home runs. I can see who's the home run leader for 2019. See, it was Pete Alonso. If I come here, it'll tell me 2020 is Luke Voigt, 2021 is Shohei Ohtani. So what I can do is I can graph this on a graph. Insert computer is moving slow today. All right, there we go. Man. All right. All right, so I've gotten this onto a sheet here, and so we come up here to chart design and select the data here. So you can see on this one what we want is we want the players' names. And the name of this is going to be all right, computer's moving slow, so I'm going to have to wrap this up here. This is going to take too long. Okay. Okay. And so you can see we're mapping out here, and it's not the most useful chart, but this is just to give you an idea of what it's capable of. You can see here Shohei Ohtani's right there in front, and then if we were to change this to 2020, it's not going to, okay, there, updated automatically, change that. So anyway, I hope this helps help you in whatever you're doing.